Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily podcast. Now, you might think we're starting off with a joke today, but what happens when a digital publisher and a talent manager walk into a bar? Well, it turns out that it could be the key to understanding the complex, rapidly evolving world of the creator economy. Yeah, apologies for not having a punchline there, but today we're lucky enough to have Victor Potrel, VP of Content Distribution at TheSoul Publishing, and Reza Izad, the co-founder of the leading generation talent management called _Talent. Now, both Victor and Reza have a combined experience of over 30 years, and they're seasoned veterans in the digital landscape, and they're influencing a portfolio of brands that reach an astounding 1.5 billion social media subscribers and generate between them over 20 billion views monthly. Now, a few months ago, they teamed up to amplify the voices of creators and bring about a major shift in the dynamics of the creator space. And ultimately, they sit at a unique intersection between creators, platforms, and consumers, and offer a fresh and comprehensive perspective on this ever-changing industry. So today, I want to discuss everything from the rise of the attention economy, snackable content, understanding audience and platform cultures, the differences between working with traditional and digitally native talent, to the monetization of programs and platform wars between everything from YouTube, TikTok and Instagram and all the usual suspects. So buckle up and hold on tight, because today I'm going to beam your ears directly to the UK and the US at exactly the same time, where we're going to dive into the significance of this collaboration and how it's revolutionizing the creator economy. So a massive warm welcome to the show. We've got two great guests joining us today. Victor, I'd love to begin with you. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Neil. Very excited to be on the show. So my name is Victor Potrel. I'm a Vice President of Content Distribution at TheSoul Publishing. So what TheSoul Publishing does, we are essentially a digital media studio. So we have studios and we produce our own content. Now, primarily, the distribution approach is to distribute across social media and streaming platforms. So we own some of the largest entertainment brand in the world, with brands, for instance, like 5 Minute Craft, Brightside, 123Go, and we produce this content and we distribute it across those platforms. So if we combine all our different audiences across languages and across brands and platforms, we have over 1.5 billion combined followers, subscribers, which is great. And yeah, we're continuing to kind of make sure that we produce and distribute fun, entertainment content. We also do animations, and we have very different genre that we are focusing on. As for myself, so I spent 4 years at TheSoul, where I've been overseeing the content distribution and how we, distribute all the great content that our studios are producing. Before that, I spent 2 years at the Lego Group, so the toy company, where I was also in charge of social media innovation and content production there, which was really cool. And I got a lot of Lego sets at the time, and a lot of new friends as well that wanted Lego sets. And before that, I spent actually 6 years at YouTube, where I was looking after both creators, but also businesses that wanted to grow their viewership on YouTube. So it was super interesting to be at the heart of, what was essentially the kind of early stage of the creator economy.
And Reza, for you as well, a huge welcome to joining us on the podcast. Anything you could share about who you are, what you do, for anyone hearing about you for the first time?
Absolutely. And again, thank you for having us. I currently am the co-CEO and founder of a company called _Talent. We're a management company that's focused on representing sort of stars in the digital content creation ecosystem. We have about 300 clients. And we're focused on a ton of really interesting genres in the space. So we have a very strong gaming business. We have a very, powerful culinary business. We represent a lot of the top YouTube channels that are in the kids and family space. And we work with a number of very well-known and highly recognized sort of, TikTok and YouTube sort of celebrities. And sort of that's sort of the core of our business. And we have as one of our sidelines, which is where sort of thematically where we sort of intersect really heavily with what TheSoul Publishing does, is we launched a company called Shorthand Studios, which helps content creators essentially distribute their content across the myriad of platforms that are supporting sort of ad-supported video content. And, we recently partnered with TheSoul. And, a big part of that partnership is leveraging all the tools and technology that they've built and all the production capabilities that they have to really help accelerate, our capabilities to help creators sort of put their content in all the places where they can either A, expand their audiences, which is super important, and then B, sort of help monetize that content and collect, sort of maximize the ad revenue potential for the content that they're creating. Prior to Underscore, I've been in the creator economy for a little over a decade. I founded one of the original sort of MCNs called Studio 71. And prior to that, I was a manager at a company called The Collective, and I was one of the partners there. And we managed artists ranging from, Martin Lawrence and Cat Williams, two very well-regarded comedians, to Linkin Park and Kanye West, Enrique Iglesias, and a ton of well-known musicians. And our thesis was that sort of all the disintermediation that these platforms were sort of bringing into the world would allow creative people to go direct to consumer and really sort of own the fruits of their labor, and really build powerful businesses. And where that all played out, where that thesis played out actually is in the creator economy, and originally on YouTube and now on all of these other platforms.
Well, that's incredibly cool. It's a pleasure to have you both on the podcast. And a question I've got to ask is, you're both key figures in the creator economy. And the question I want to ask you, I'll take you back in time. I'm curious, how did your paths cross, and what would ultimately lead to this collaboration between you?
Yes, I know on my side that, we've heard, and I work also with Reza and Dan for some time. I knew them from their work at Studio 71. Always been impressed with how kind of forward thinking they've been, investing, again, like creating businesses and teams within the creator economy before it was a thing. So basically, yeah, that's kind of when our paths came across. And what we realized is at TheSoul, we've built this amazing platform, these amazing brands for ourselves, and this great technology as well, which help us to distribute at scale across different platforms, localize our content. And we were just really utilizing this for our own brands. So like looking at what Underscore and the great relationship that they've built as well with talents, is like, what if we actually could start to utilize this technology to also help amplify those people? So yeah, that was kind of a no-brainer when this idea started to come to us, and then just because we already interacted with Reza and Dan, and they were setting up Underscore at the time, just kind of the conversation flew naturally.
Yeah, I mean, look, we'd known them for, I want to say, better part of a decade. In terms of, and we'd worked together when we were at Studio 71, and Victor was, running distribution for TheSoul. So we've had a working relationship for quite some time.
And you're both dealing with an immense amount of content every single day. So I'm curious, from everything you're seeing out there, how do you see the attention economy influencing the rise of more snackable content? And what impact does this have on creators and platforms, etc.?
What we see, of course, there is kind of growing complexity. It used to be mostly YouTube, maybe a bit of Facebook, but now there's more platforms where you can distribute your content, more different formats, from short form to regular content, let's call it, to longer form, to live stream, and then different audiences that are within different context of viewing as well. So I think for creators in general, like the approach that we have for ourselves and we think is the best, is to make sure that you are where the audience is and consume the content the way that they want to consume it. Don't push them to your own place and to your own format. So in order to do this, you need to stay efficient, because that's a lot of format and a lot of platforms. So that's kind of where technology and businesses that can support you can really help with that. So ultimately, we think even though there is this complexity, it can be solved. And also ultimately, more platform is actually good for content creators because platforms, more and more, they are encouraging content creation. They're providing more rewards for investing in their platform, including creating content. So that benefit the whole ecosystem.
I was just going to add one thing. I mean, I think, look, Victor's perspective is as a content producer, ours is a little bit more on the talent side and relevant side. And I think there's two core perspectives that we would have, right? One is, we're in this weird moment in time where the platforms that create the most relevance, right, that drive the conversation, that create fame, that create trends, are not the ones that monetize the best. And so there's a bit of schizophrenia at the moment, which I think will all equalize and all change. But where, if you want to be famous and you want to be relevant and you want to build businesses outside of just monetizing ads, you sort of need to go where the relevance is on one hand. And on the other hand, you need to make sure your content is also everywhere else it can be monetized. So there's this weird thing going on, even inside YouTube, right? You see the growth of shorts. It's taking a lot of attention from more better monetized, more highly monetized, longer form content. And so there's this weird moment where people are having to make tough decisions, right? Do you chase relevance or do you chase revenue? And trying to balance that can be somewhat tough. I think in the long term, it'll balance out, right? Shorts is starting to monetize. People are starting to see better ad rates on there, even though it's very small, it's growing. So over time, this will all sort of balance itself out. But right now, there's this pretty significant gap from content that makes you relevant versus content that really can make you, significant sums of money. And I think there's some exceptions to that rule, but that seems to be how the market is driving at the moment. And so we're hoping, 2-3 years out, those lines start to converge more. So there's more logic to how that works.
And I think audience and platform cultures can be vastly different across the digital landscape. There's so many different things happening there. And how does your understanding of these cultures influence your own strategy and decision-making processes? Because the space is evolving so quickly, isn't it?
For us, the one thing that's interesting, it's very genre dependent. So like culinary, which used to be very heavily weighted on, but actually blogs and food blogs and things like that. Obviously, that moved heavily to Instagram. But, in the last year or two, TikTok is really driving the culinary conversation and frankly, driving a ton of revenue to people who've built scale there. Whereas, things like outdoor lifestyle, where people are doing hunting, fishing, we'll call it red state activities, working on their, on their muscle cars or building trucks or doing things like that. That still seems to be heavily weighted on YouTube in terms of the domain where it's consumed, where people are engaging with the content. So even within genres, there are pretty heavy duty spreads of where the pockets of audiences are, which makes for, every vertical that you're in needs a different strategy in terms of who you're signing, how you're focusing on it, how you're packaging and selling it. And so, we built ourselves in these very verticalized teams in order to manage that.
Yeah, I think that's super relevant. When the way that we see the same trend on our side is the way that we adapt our brands across platform, for instance, and across verticals. So just to give you a very concrete example, when we launched on TikTok was 2019. I think it was our third or fourth page that we launched was 5 minutes recycle and 5 minute green. So which are all about recycling, and the second one is about how to take care of your plants and so on. So those were a lot more kind of targeted towards this niche because we knew that on TikTok there was like a big community looking for this kind of content, and also the Gen Z audience that at the time was dominant. Now it's even broader on TikTok was really like into upcycling and different tips along those lines. So we do think about the communities and also what kind of differences there could be before launching, and we adapt this and we take this into account in the way that we package our content as well. And then I think that there's the last component is that after you start to be active, you start to get statistics, understanding of who your audience is, what they like, and obviously that's very powerful in social media. And we inform ourselves as well with this data that we have from the platforms to then make better decisions in the future.
And I would imagine working with both traditional and digitally native talent presents its own unique challenges and benefits. So Could you share a few experiences with these different talent types and how you've adapted your approaches to suit them?
Let's just take your typical musician, right?
Yeah.
That's a well-known musician that, by the way, may have a very active sort of social media following and stuff like that. For the most part, they're not native content creators, right? And they tend to want teams to support their work and all of that sort of stuff. So in order to get the machine going, for many of the musical talent, there tends to be a much different infrastructure and team that goes around it. You see the same thing in sports. You see the same thing with actors who are doing stuff like the Kevin Harts of the world, the Dwayne Johnsons of the world, those like superstars. They tend to have much heavier infrastructures related to what they're doing from a content point of view. And the second part is their goals are radically different, because they're using these platforms to promote, 100 million or $1 billion projects, things that are just of a different, different nature. So everything tends to go through a very, a much more less organic lens, for lack of a better word. And then when you're talking about the digitally native content creator, I mean, they're, frankly, just like Victor and his teams are in the analytics and are looking at every video and the performance of every video, and they're watching sort of these outcomes quite profoundly. These people tend to know how these platforms work better than even the platforms do. And so it's just a very, very different conversation when you're talking to sort of traditional talent versus talent that's built their career on these platforms, simply because of the way they use the platforms, the way they produce content for the platforms, and frankly, how hard they're thinking about making sure they're delivering content for the audience. I mean, I'm sure everyone's seen interviews with Mr. Beast. I mean, if you get him going on analytics and what's going on in the back end, I mean, he can go on forever. I don't know that that's true of any other talent, that's in the more coming at it from a more traditional perspective. And I think that's the biggest difference in terms of, how they're viewing these opportunities and how they're viewing like working on these platforms. The rest of the stuff, the business side, everybody's got their own unique perspectives on business. And so the business side tends to have a very similar cadence and perspective, assuming you understand the needs of what the talent's looking for.
Yeah, I think very good points. I think I just wanted to add specifically with digital talents from the experience I had as well, working with some of them. A lot of them are quite new to this fame, let's call it. So there's also this human component as well, that can be a lot. There can be a lot of things to do as they grow and the audience is growing, and, they get feedback, comments. So it's also important to, step back and make sure you partner with the right people and get the help that you need. So that's what I kind of underscore. And Reza, that's what is great is what they built, they're providing that professional framework as well, which can help people that might be new to this talent world.
So with monetization programs also becoming increasingly important for creators, how do you view the platform between major players like YouTube, TikTok and Instagram? And how do you navigate these platforms when advising the creators you work with? Because I would imagine that every story is completely different.
There's not a lot of, I don't think there's like a big debate that you need to be on as many of these platforms that are relevant, right? I think sometimes, like when there's a new product that rolls out, we'll call it YouTube Shorts was the last, I think, major platform change on YouTube. And, we were advocating heavily for a lot of TikTok talent and talent who are creating vertical video to move on to that. And look, this is not brain surgery. When these platforms launch and they are a priority for these large companies that have, pools of audiences that are, almost hard to fathom, being first is really important. And the people that come in first often get an exponential lift versus sort of people who show up when the party's already started. It's much harder to get in. It's much harder to build an audience. It's much harder to build traction. And so every time there's sort of a platform product shift, we tend to advocate for our clients to make that move if they can. And if they can't, we offer sort of our distribution services and content services such that we're helping them move their content in those areas, simply because there is typically an exponential factor of being early in terms of your outcomes in those spaces. So navigating the platforms is not the complex part of the creator economy. The complex part of the creator economy is all the other ways that you can monetize, right? Whether that's fan subscriptions, brand and branded content, your merchandising and licensing programs. Are you starting a business around your expertise and specialty? Are you doing more traditional things in film, TV, publishing, touring, things like that? That's where, I think the creators and these businesses that they run, really need help navigating, because there's just a lot coming at them at one time. They tend to be smaller companies, with small teams and with really, frankly, big and fantastic opportunities. And so they need people to help them navigate sort of the complexity of what comes with building scale and building reach on these large platforms, which are the sort of the business development opportunities around their businesses.
Yeah, I would definitely echo that, this kind of first mover is important. That's probably also why, as a content creator, you should not just you should set your KPI as well in terms of reach, engagement, and not just kind of think beyond immediate monetization for some of those platforms. And we're seeing it now, with short form content, there's monetization on the advertising side. It started to come across those platforms because a lot of them are competing for the creators in this format. They're willing to offer more incentives. So now people that have moved to this format across these platforms are in a good place.
And from the outside looking in here, bringing your two industry-leading companies together really feels like a significant move in the creator space. So can you explain the real significance of the partnership and how ultimately you're poised to impact the creator economy and what you want to achieve here?
Yeah, I mean, I can give our point of view. So on our side, we've spent years building brands and also building the underlying tech, which enables us to create content. Not only that, but also distribute it, adapt it across different localization, make sure that we utilize and we understand the performance, because we have almost live statistics and inform future content creation. So all those things we've built, for ourselves. But there's also like a lot of talent out there. And what we've seen is that with what Underscore and Reza and his team has been built in terms of relationship, we can really use that technology that we've built to benefit and amplify the voices of the creators. Because ultimately, the digital stars that are working with the team, they are kind of tomorrow's biggest media stars. If you ask a younger generation about some movie people versus YouTubers, they would actually rank the YouTubers first in terms of recognition. So we think it's very important to kind of support this growing part of the economy as well. And we see that we have the best in class tools when it comes to content distribution and production practices, and we're putting this at the service of the best in class creators in the world. So I think it's super exciting.
Yeah, look, we were looking at it from the other perspective before we made the partnership, which was what were we going to have to build and create to build a truly sustainable and scalable business around content distribution. And when we had the opportunity to sort of look under the hood a little further around what TheSoul have built and sort of their capabilities, I mean, it's pretty staggering, right? They have, I think it's somewhere in the magnitude of, 2,700 people working for them. They've built tools to automate like the entirety of the production process so they can work, in the most efficient manner possible. And I think, when you're trying to distribute, hundreds of pieces or thousands of pieces of content for creators, you really need these tools and technology and frankly, this production scale in order to do that effectively, for us to grow a business, in a meaningful period. So it was a no-brainer for us, frankly, given how far ahead they are of everyone in the market when it comes to these capabilities.
And given your unique positions between creators, platforms, and consumers, I'm curious, from everything you're seeing out there, are there any insights you can share about the current state and also future trajectory of the creator economy from what you're seeing and hearing out there?
From our perspective, it seems like there's a couple of really interesting trends that we're seeing. Obviously, there's been a lot of talk about creators getting into creating businesses around what they're doing. I think we're in that, what I call I don't want to call it the first crop, but pretty close to the first crop of, really mega businesses that have been founded, and are going to either have huge exits or going to just be significant players as freestanding businesses in the marketplace. I think Prime is probably one of the best examples of that. My understanding is that it's literally the fastest growing drink in history. And what it's doing is not only revolutionizing sort of the influencer marketing thing, but what they're doing in sports marketing, right? With their partnerships with UFC and Arsenal and NASCAR and other things, I think is really unique, because all of those sports suffer from one thing, which is their core demographics are getting older every year by 1 year. And by having Logan Paul and KSI and sort of that group of talent promoting the sports, they're actually bringing a ton of value to the sports they're partnered with. So I think what they're doing is, highly unique. And that's a trend that you're seeing sort of all over the place. So you're going to see larger creators really running fairly significant enterprises going forward, and there's many examples of it, but this is probably the shining example of the moment. That's one trend you're going to see sort of just more and more of, and you're going to see more and more A-level executives coming from packaged goods and beauty and all these other things enter into the space. So the businesses are going to just be significantly more professionalized from day one, I think, going forward, given the marketing opportunity that sort of exists. And so that's sort of like, I would say, a big trend that's happening. And I think that's happening across all of entertainment, but very significantly happening in the creator economy.
Yeah, and I think just to add, it's kind of along the same theme. We do observe almost like a similar convergence when it comes to content that is made by creators or digital media studios. When it comes to TV and longer form as well, what we see is that it's really happening. This digital content is now people that just want to watch the content that they like, basically, and they whether it's on TV, phone, tablets. So we do see that more and more, like those talents or those brands that have been created, from YouTube and Facebook. Now they are going to, to the bigger screens, and people are watching there. We see our content get millions of views on monthly basis across different TV platforms. So really, it's kind of similar conversions where you see these more grassroots creators to start with, but now they kind of build this business and they're on TV and they're launching product, and it's really changing the way that something is launched.
And we will have people listening all over the world. So I've got to ask, is there any advice that you would offer to any up-and-coming creators listening who are trying to navigate this crowded, fast-moving industry, and also how they can best utilize the services of companies like TheSoul Publishing and Underscore Talent? Is there anything you'd like to leave everyone with?
I think I must say I just kind of go over maybe two tips. One is it's good to invest in being multi-platform from the get-go. So really to think holistically, if you spend time producing this content, maybe you have already a destination in mind, but see how you can utilize that also to reach different audiences in different niches as well. So don't really change how you make your content, but make sure that you find ways that you can adapt it across platforms so you kind of diversify your audience and the way that you utilize what you do. And then the second one is, as you grow into what you do and you get successful, make sure to get help if you need to. So, creator burnout is a real thing. People are just, of course, a lot of them have grown their own audience, their own business themselves. So it's really hard to let go of part of it. but it's really important that they think, where they don't necessarily add value anymore, and delegate to spots. And that's where companies like ours can support some of this, whether it's distribution across platforms, whether it's editing, whether it's localization to access more audiences. So really, like, kind of don't be afraid to take this step back and try to see what you can delegate and what can alleviate some of the workload that you have.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think Victor said it really well. If I had anything to add, it's TheSoul was once two guys in a college dorm, right? And today it is what it is. So all of these businesses can come from very humble and small beginnings. And the just to add to what Victor was saying, one of the key principles that helps these companies sort of work, and you hear it a lot from a lot of creators too, is you got to invest in your infrastructure. Right? If your business is producing content that you own, you should make the investment in editors and producers and other people that are helping facilitate, because that's how that's how longevity is created. That's also how great ideas are created. And learning to delegate early in the process is sort of critical, because I can't tell you how many creators have actually significant businesses in the tens of millions, and they've not learned the skill of delegating. And at that volume and at those numbers, right, any change to the system is suddenly very scary. So if you delegate earlier in your career and you figure it out with a team, chances are you'll have a much more sustainable business. And delegation can also be bringing in third parties. And I think that's one of the hardest skills for many of these creators to really figure out, is how and when do they delegate, and how and when do they take, we have clients who make, $1 million a year. That's not a ton of money, but you can definitely hire 2 or 3 editors with that and make a fine living. And the question is, does that investment turn it into $1.5 million, $2 million, $3 million, $5 million? And that skill set of investment in your business is something that, I wish there was just more of in the creator space, and one that we advocate pretty heavily as a company, that people invest in their infrastructure.
Well, absolutely love chatting with you both. I'm going to have a bit of fun with you now before I let you go. You've shared your insights and expertise today. I'm going to ask you to leave one final gift for everyone listening, and that is there a song that means something to you that we can add to our Spotify playlist, or a book that we can add to our Amazon wish list? All I'm going to ask is, what are you going to leave us with and why? And Victor, I'll let you go first.
Yeah, sure. So I think I'll choose maybe a book to leave you with. So there's this book that I've had around me like for some time. It's called Agakure by Yamamoto Tsutsune-tomo. You can guess that it's a samurai book by the name of it. Basically, I just like it because it's a very old book, which samurai used to read, and it collects some stories from them. And it's kind of always the stories that can be relatable to any situation of today's world. So I found it kind of fascinating that you can have this parallels between these old books and life experience in our times. And also, like a fun fact, like this book was also the subject of a movie called Ghost Dog: The Way of the Samurai, which has music from Reza, which doesn't have any association with Reza that is here with us today. But that could be a song for people to listen to as well.
Oh, incredibly cool. Reza, the pressure's on you now to do it.
Mine is not as cool as a book on samurais and the life of the samurai, I thought. But the one thing that sort of influenced my thinking a lot, because, as we were getting sort of into, when we were transitioning our business from a management business, which is really a one-of-one business, right? There's only one Lincoln Park in the world, right? And you're sort of much more about managing a brand and thinking about the long-term sustainability of a brand, and we were transitioning into the digital ecosystem where our competitive set, and this is 2009, 10, 11, we're all scaling and signing 10,000, 50,000. You'd hear, I go to meetings with my competitors and they, I've signed 10,000 people and all this sort of nonsense. There was an article that this woman, Anita Elbers, put out, which was sort of a refuting Chris Anderson's long tail theory, which was so prevalent in Silicon Valley and things like that. And her thesis was, even in the long tail, there's a fat head, right? And what her analysis is, look, the record store could only have 50,000 albums, but the internet could hold millions of albums. But nonetheless, that 1%, right? Even though the pie is bigger, that 1% is still driving 50, 60, 70% of the economics in any of these given situations. And that was really helpful to me to sort of think about our thesis in terms of how we were going to run that business. But frankly, all of these scale businesses, I mean, I think we all get caught up in these billions and billions of numbers where everyone in the world is attached to these platforms and all of that stuff. And yes, YouTube benefits from a long tail, but all the people that are providing services and operating on these platforms, the long tail doesn't really exist in that fashion, right? We are still in the business of one to drive our economics. And I think that's really critical for us. And so from a business perspective, that piece had probably the biggest impact sort of on how I've thought about the business. We at Studio 71 never had 10,000 anything. We found it, intolerable and insufferable that somebody would have that. And at Underscore, we're definitely not focused on servicing, the millions of creators or tens of thousands of creators, but really focused on trying to identify who's going to be that next one of one.
Fantastic. Two great choices there. I'll get those added to our list. But before I let you go, for anyone listening, just wanting to find out more information about the stuff we talked about, connect with you or your team. Reza, can you just tell everyone where they can find out more about Underscore Talent?
Yeah, our website's www.underscoretalent.com.
Awesome. And Victor, have you got a nice, easy URL to remember too?
Yeah, it's pretty much also like our name, but so you can look at that, or you can also check our updates on LinkedIn and Facebook, Instagram, and of course all our brands as well, which you might already be following or subscribing to. I hope so.
Well, we covered so much there in a short amount of time, from the attention economy, the rise of snackable content, understanding audiences and platform cultures, to working with traditional versus digitally native talent, and so much more. But more than anything, just a big thank you to both of you for taking the time to sit down and share those insights and expertise with me today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow, what a couple of cool guys there. Great conversation. And I cannot thank Victor and Reza for joining me today and offering their deep insights into the creator economy and everything that they're seeing. And I think their pioneering work at TheSoul Publishing and Underscore Talent retrospectively is a testament to how their innovative minds are helping shape this industry. And as I said a few moments ago, we covered a lot of ground today, from understanding the attention economy to the intriguing platforms and ultimately why it's so crucial to understand audience and platform cultures and those nuances of working with different types of talent. But above all, I think I learned that the significance of their partnership and its potential impact on the creator economy. So thank you to Victor and Reza for sharing their insights and experience with us today. And remember, the conversation doesn't have to stop here. Email me now, techblogwriter@outlook.com, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram @NeilCHughes. We can keep this conversation going. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. But before I go, I'm going to give you another gentle reminder. Stay curious. Keep exploring this tech landscape. And if you enjoyed yourself, why not join me again tomorrow for another exciting episode? Well, thank you for listening as always. And until next time, don't be a stranger.